This is the MEN2 Podcast with Scott and Mick. On today's podcast, we find out how Captain Marvel sabotaged her own movie, we take a look at the dumbest hate crime hoax of the century, and we explore the rise of victimhood culture.
67% of the top critics reviewing the 100 highest grossing movies in 2017 were white males. I do not need a 40-year-old white dude to tell me what didn't work for him about A Wrinkle in Time. It wasn't made for him. I want to know what that film meant to women of color, to biracial women, to teen women of color, to teens that are biracial.
Brie Larson won't allow the Captain Marvel media tour to be overwhelmingly white or male. Speaking to Marie Claire, Larson said, "About a year ago, I started paying attention to what my press days look like, and the critics reviewing movies, and noticed it appeared to be overwhelmingly white male. So I spoke to Dr. Jussie Smith at the USC Annenberg Inclusion Initiative, who put together a study to confirm that." Larson then goes on to say, they put together a study that found that of the 100 highest grossing movies in 2017, 67% of the top critics were white males, less than 25% were white women, while 10% were men of colour, and 2.5% were women of colour. And as a result of that, Larson says she started handpicking the journalists she works with, giving preference to journalists of colour who she believes may not get the same opportunities as other entertainment reporters.
Yeah. Notice when you read that bit about the USC Annenberg Inclusion Initiative, who put together a study to confirm that. That's not the way you do science.
In small text, they're funding.
Yeah. Come on. The Inclusion Initiative, it is advocacy research, obviously, but you don't start out with your conclusion and then try and confirm the conclusion. You actually do the opposite of that.
It's like saying that the Nazi Scientific Research Committee has found that Jews are 83% more likely to.
But I mean, her claim. I mean, the claim about women of journalists of colour, and particularly women not getting the same opportunities, just doesn't hold up at all. So first, the statistics she relays, or the first time she said this actually was during a Women's Film Association Awards, and you can see it online. And like all idiots that wade into this territory, they make one basic false assumption that occupational categories should reflect the demographic makeup of the country. And of course, she has to ignore all the other occupational categories, which is to say just about all of them, where the disparities exist, and even ones in her own industry. So, for example, 96% of makeup artists are women. 90% of costume designers are women. But, let's just focus on this one cherry-picked example.
Have you applied for a job as a makeup artist and got denied
Not
because
lately.
you're a man? Not lately.
But the statistics are skewed, because what she doesn't say is that the reason white males constitute 67% of top critics is because white males write more reviews. And this was on the top 100 films, right? Now, anyone can write a review and submit it, anyone working in a particular magazine or whatever. But it turns out that more than 87% of these women of colour movie reviewers write less than 10 reviews of the top 100 films. So either they're writing film reviews on esoteric stuff that nobody's watching, at some weird film festival, or they're just not writing many reviews. I would suggest that it's the latter.
Maybe those trans athletes had a point. Women just need to work harder.
Exactly. But, put it another way, white male movie critics are writing almost 3 times as many reviews as women of colour of those top 100 grossing films of the year. But even when you factor that out, white men are still overrepresented. They're still half. They're still half of all movie critics. And why is that? I mean, is there some institutional sexism that men are just allowed to do this and women aren't? Or could it be that they're just more inclined to do this kind of work? And so there's some good evidence that it is the case that men just like doing this stuff more. Because when you look at writing endeavours for which there are no gatekeepers, that is to say no institutional bias that would prevent minorities or women or anybody else from submitting work, you find something interesting. So this comes from the Diversity Delusion. Her name's Heather McDonald. The author's Heather McDonald. That's
a book, right?
Fantastic book, yeah. She also wrote The War on Cops, another really good book. Anyway, she found that 87% of Wikipedia entries are done by males, and 2/3 of op-eds and letters to the editor are also submitted by males. Now, there's no impediments there. Anyone can make a Wikipedia entry. You don't. It's just that, men are more interested in writing these fact-based things and just like doing that kind of stuff. So, Larson is just spouting off about things she doesn't understand. It seems to go back to she just doesn't like the fact that white men are, say, criticising a film that's, let's say, there was a movie, I can't recall the name of it now, but it's all black cast women, and she goes, I don't care what white males have to say about this. I want to hear what black women have to say.
Black Panther?
No, it wasn't that. It wasn't that.
Right.
That wasn't an all black cast. But anyway, it wasn't that film. But the film I'm referring to, and I can't remember, got panned widely, and it's just it's basically stay in your lane bullshit. You're white, you can't comment on this, which is of course just that overtly racist, and not to mention the sexism involved. And of course, this has now had some obvious repercussions. So if you've been paying attention to Rotten Tomatoes, along with their usual rating systems of rating movies by critics and the fans rating the movie when they see it, they had this thing. Well, I say they used to have this thing called a want to see meter, and Captain Marvel was up, I think in the 70s, like close to 80%, and it's just got down something like 25% as this, because if you've been on YouTube, there are just endless videos about Brie Larson thinks white men shouldn't watch Captain Marvel, blah blah blah. I made one myself that was more about debunking these stupid statistics that she made. But yeah, basically, so people have just gone on there and registered their I'm not going to see this. Brie Larson doesn't want me to see it. I'm not going to see it. I'm not going to see.
I think it had a 37% pre-approval rating.
Yeah, but
and that's now been removed.
No, but it got to 25%.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it got to 25%, and now they've removed it. But this is the hilarious part. They've removed that rating from the whole website, not just from her movie. And here's the hilarious part. The management of Rotten Tomatoes said, we are disabling the comment function prior to a movie's release date. Unfortunately, we've seen an uptick in non-constructive input, which sometimes bordering on trolling, which we believe is a disservice to our general readership. We've decided that turning off this feature for now is the best course of action. And they also said that it wasn't done in response to Captain Marvel, but a wider site changes.
On exactly the same day.
Yeah. And if you believe that, I have a bridge to sell you.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like there are a series of attempts to sabotage ratings for movies which are seen to be promoting SJW values.
Yeah.
And I think Star Wars, the Star Wars ones have been...
Soilo.
Yeah, have been done like that. And I think I saw one particular review that sort of shows how certain people have been doing. And this review said, this is talking about Star Wars, The Force Awakens, I think.
Yep.
And the review reads, if you like stunning visuals, superficial character development, a choppy, incoherent, illogical plot holes, SJW concepts such as capitalism is bad, animal abuse is bad, make love not war, every bad guy being a white male and neutering every positive protagonist male in this movie, or you are only a casual fan of Star Wars, you'll probably like this movie. I think it's actually a pretty good review.
Yeah, it is. And this is the thing, because think of the words that the Rotten Tomatoes management used. Non-constructive input. What does that mean? You didn't like it, or you're not. Now, I can understand if they can identify sock puppet accounts. That is, some guys created 50 accounts and gone in there and said, not interested, right? Without leaving a comment. Well, then you've got evidence that it's been driven down on purpose. But people are generally going in there and saying, well, I'm not going to watch this because Brie Larson's a sexist. That's a genuine decision that people are making. There's nothing wrong with that at all. Yeah. She has made overtly sexist comments. She has made and racist comments as well. So fuck her. I mean, she is the reason that this is tanking. There's no other reason for it.
Well, I kind of like. I marvel at her ability to enjoy white privilege and make $5 million for a shitty movie, and then somehow she's managed to turn herself into a victim as well at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, I would have thought that this movie would do well anyway, because if you're a fan of the series, you want to see them all. And I think this one has been strategically... It opens on March 8th, right? It's been strategically put there because the final Avengers movie, Avengers Endgame, comes out on like April the 26th, I think. So you got like a 6-7 week lead. So if you're one of these people who, you know, you're like a completionist, you know, you have to see everything and you want to see it in sequence, well, then you really have to see this one because it's going to set up the final one. Because apparently, I don't know how much you watch these Avenger movies.
I'd never even heard of this movie
So
before we started talking about it.
So I watch them because they are the types of movies, for me, they're just sort of, you switch off and it's all action and special effects and, you know, and there's some funny, you get some laughs out of it, there's some comedy, especially, you know, Thor and that, they're quite funny, they do have some good dialogue. But in the last one, basically, spoiler alert for anyone who didn't see the last one, Infinity Wars, Thanos, who's the bad guy, basically killed half the universe, right? And he did this out of a sort of an altruistic, you know, there's not enough food to go around, a Malthusian sort of point of view. That's why he did it. And apparently she, Captain Marvel, has got the power to bring these people back to life and defeat Thanos. So she's integral to this series. And my point is, I don't know, I have no idea what the movie's going to be like. Could be complete crap, could be awesome. But I still think probably it's going to get a decent viewership because people want to see how this series develops. You know, I mean, and it is the second to last one, and they're 7 weeks apart. So
it's only nutters like us that really pay attention to this stuff.
I mean, no, there's way more bigger fanboys than me. That, I mean, I'm not a big fan because I don't know the comic book series that well. I'm not, you know, not. But
look, if Brie Larson really wanted to make a statement, I think she should have just handed her role to a minority female actor.
Yeah.
But she didn't.
She didn't.
No.
Well, that's always
everybody
the way,
else's problem to fix.
Do as I say, not as I do.
Yeah. Well, I mean, according to NPD Market Research Group, and getting back to the stats about the number of movie reviewers, I mean, so 63% of comics and graphic novels overall are purchased by men, and 37% by women. That pretty much is about the same as the statistics she was preaching in the number of...
What would be more interesting is what the breakdown of... Because I bet you it's even more skewed towards superheroes of a certain genre for men, you know, and what are the comic books that women are actually purchasing? You know, is it Nancy Drew? Is that still around? I don't know. But, you know, are they the same comics? There's probably a breakdown here.
That's from about the 50s, isn't
it? I
know.
But she was a
feminist?
in the kitchen?
Was she in the kitchen washing dishes and at night she'd go out and beat up some...
No, she was...
was she a detective
Nancy,
or something?
Yeah. She was out there solving crimes and stuff. You know, she was ahead of her time.
Okay. Yeah. Did she have a black maid doing all of her housework for her so her husband didn't...
I couldn't tell you.
Slap her across the face when he
I
got
burn all my Nancy Drew books.
Along with your bra.
In my feminist burning.
Yeah, right. So the entire comics market is 69% white, 12% Latino, 10% African American, and 8% Asian.
Consumers, you're talking about?
I'm talking about consumers. Yeah, it's the entire comics market.
Yeah.
And so if we're saying that 67% of the reviewers were white males, well, it's pretty much mimics the actual market.
Well, actually, it's only 53% of the critics are white males. It's just that 67% of their reviews got made into the top. Got identified as top reviews because they write more reviews.
Yeah.
So they're actually underrepresented by your numbers.
Well, I mean, coming back to, movie studios, I mean, how are they choosing who gets to interview Brie Larson?
Yeah.
Is it by the biggest reach? I would assume it'd be by who has the biggest reach.
Entertainment Tonight and all these other mobs.
So, yeah.
That's interviews, but that's different from...
But how do these people build... how do they become the biggest audience?
You mean how do the reviewers?
Yeah, how do the reviewers become? How do they build the biggest audience?
Who reads movie reviewers anyway?
I guess some people do.
Does anyone read them? I mean, honestly, do you think in this day and age, like go back before the internet, right? A big budget movie, you might see an ad for it on TV, right? Maybe coming to a theatre near you, or back then it was the drive-in, right? It's going to be
How
the
old
drive.
Are you? I thought we were the same age. You're talking about stuff that happened
I can
in the
remember
50s.
falling asleep during Superman, the first or the second one.
Was that because he smoked about 15 bongs or something? Or
no, I was like 3 years of age, sat in the back
Question
of my parents'
still
car, sitting on
Question still applies.
sitting on 4 pillows.
Was it your parents doing a compression session or something?
Yeah. I had to sit on 4 pillows just so I could see over the dashboard in front of the car.
Did your dad have to smuggle you in the boot of the car so you didn't have to pay for the child?
It wasn't illegal to take kids to the drive-in. Everybody did it.
Yeah.
They had putt-putt golf at the drive-in.
Sounds awesome.
Like, because they had like intermission, and everybody got out of the car and went to and got
the smoke
food
poured out the doors as they opened.
It was awesome. The driving. The stupidest thing was that the cars would be piled up for like 5 kilometers on the highway to get there. You know, just driving. But you know, people got there early, and you just drove your car and up to the wherever you wanted to, and you just picked off the headphones. And how did we get onto that?
Yeah, I don't know. All it really tells you is that you're very old.
Sorry, yeah.
You're very old, or you live in the middle of nowhere.
No, but what I was going to say is, so you want to watch a movie now? What do? I go straight to YouTube and find the trailer. That's what's going to do it for me. I mean, and I don't like reading movie reviewers because I don't want spoilers. I don't want to read someone who's seen the movie and is going to tell me the whole plot. I mean,
I like the percentage rating. That's how I generally do it.
Yeah.
I don't like to see anything about them. I'll never watch a preview.
Yeah.
I will probably go to one of those websites, Rotten Tomatoes,
and just
look at the percentage. If the percentage is kind of over 60, 70, I'll probably give it a shot.
But do you? Because here's in the age of SJW, authoritarianism. What you see with a lot of movies who have that bent on them is that the difference between the movie critics, let's say they've got, it's 80%, and then the audience might say it's 55%.
Yeah, right. Yep.
And I'm leaning towards the audience in that because
totally.
There's a lot of pressure on movie critics just to toe the line. Yes, this was diverse and inclusive and had strong female characters.
Well, let's imagine now that you're a minority reviewer who's never had access to interview someone like Brie Larson before, and all of a sudden you get a one-on-one with Brie Larson. I mean, do you think that person's going to be more likely to give a good review or a bad review?
Yeah, well, exactly.
Yeah. So, but I still find it weird that we're talking about people of colour. I still think it's such a weird term.
I know.
Because we spent the whole sort of 70s and 80s and 90s getting that out of our vocabulary.
Yeah.
You weren't supposed to talk about people based on their skin colour.
Yeah.
You weren't supposed to judge them on their skin colour.
That's right.
And now it seems, I mean, they used to be called coloureds.
Yeah.
In the 50s and 60s.
Which if you said that, that's horrendously racist. I mean, you can see pictures of those water fountains where it said whites, coloureds. Yeah. I mean, you can see those online from Jim Crow South. Yeah. But just put people of in front, and all of a sudden
that's fine, and like maybe a little smiley face or something.
Yeah.
I find it weird, and I think that if you sort of think about Martin Luther King saying, don't judge me on the colour of my skin, judge me by the content of my character. I mean, if someone said that today, they would be called a racist.
Oh yeah, I mean, I've seen people roll their eyes when you say that because it's kind of like, you're still going on about that. It's like,
no, the whole civil rights movement was based on that.
Yeah, it's with all of these, whatever group you want to talk about, trans, gay people. It's like the least interesting thing about you is your race and how you like to have sex. I don't care. I'm not interested. What are your ideas?
I still want to sometimes hear about that stuff.
Speak for yourself. But, I mean, it's just not important. I mean, if you, maybe, let's say there's a kid that's talking about, he's going around giving a talk about what's it like to grow up in a outback indigenous community where there are no white people and it's just, a completely different kind of life. Yeah, that could be interesting. Sure. And I've got no input. And that would be interesting based on your identity and growing up. But most Aboriginal people don't live way out in some remote community.
Yeah, that's right.
It's not important. I mean, Mark Latham, who's now, been sort of disowned by the left, he said when he started politics, he sat at the knee of Gough Whitlam. And Gough Whitlam was one of the people in the Labor Party who pushed so hard to get people to think of race as some minor genetic variation that's of no importance whatsoever. And Gough, because it wasn't long before Gough Whitlam's time where you had a white Australia policy, and both sides of politics were in agreement about that, right? And he was sort of, we've got to get ourselves out of this mindset. No, race is not important, gender is not important, and the Labor Party's just gone, whoop, let's do a 180 on that. It's just the most strange thing.
Well, it's just victim culture, rearing its ugly head. It's who's the bigger victim, who is the biggest victim,
Yeah.
And how many different things have you got about you that makes you a victim?
I think it's me. I'm going slightly bald.
There should be... Well, those people literally are victims.
This announcement today recognizes that Empire actor Jussie Smollett took advantage of the pain and anger of racism to promote his career. I'm left hanging my head and asking why. Why would anyone, especially an African-American man, use the symbolism of a noose to make false accusations, to manipulate that symbol to further his own public profile?
Let's talk about Jussie Smollett and the ever-changing story. The ever-changing story. Now, are you old enough for that one?
Yeah, I am, unfortunately.
Yeah,
I'm cringing at your singing, but I'm also cringing the fact that I'm old enough to...
I actually thought it was beautiful.
Wait till you hear it back.
Yeah, so I guess this story just keeps taking more and more turns, but I think we're getting towards the end of it. But
well, let's break it down.
Yeah, let's go back and do a quick timeline. Okay, so January 22nd this year, Smollett allegedly receives some hate mail
addressed to his studio.
His studio, didn't go to his home, that says "Die Black Fag" with a picture of a stick figure being hung from a tree. And
how long did it take you to write that letter? Was it something that you sort of knocked up?
Well, it's
a few drafts.
It's less than 10 words, so didn't take me, but it took me about an afternoon.
Yeah. Probably the cutting out of the letters out of the magazine was one of the things.
That took a whole weekend.
Yeah.
And it had MAGA written on the envelope.
From MAGA.
Yeah, basically. To Jussie from MAGA. No, it wasn't exactly like that, but it said MAGA. Written, and it looked like, it was written by a 5-year-old. So the Osundairo brothers, who are the...
well, hang on. We shouldn't be introducing those guys, yeah?
Because they now say that he wrote the letter, right?
They wrote the letter.
Yeah.
Yep.
They wrote the letter. So...
so these two guys are friends of acquaintances of Jussie.
Well,
one of them was an extra on...
They're more than acquaintances, I would say. Yeah.
Well, they are now. Cell buddies, I think.
Yeah.
But so those two guys, one of them was Jussie's personal trainer, and I'm not sure if it was the same guy, was also an extra on Empire, which is Jussie's...
Yeah, I think they were both different. The taller guy was his trainer, and the stockier guy was
an extra.
Was the extra.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, they said... So let's keep on the timeline. January 22nd, he gets his hate mail. The brothers say that he actually wrote it. Now, there was some plausibility to this because Smollett actually has said a lot of really rabid stuff about Trump. For example, he tweeted that Trump was a, quote, dumpster full of hate, and if you supported him, you were the equivalent of a Klan member, basically. I mean, that's... And he even says that in that very now embarrassing interview on ABC, where he said, "I come really hard at 45." He said,
lips quivering.
Yeah, he's such a stunning and brave man. So there's some plausibility of that, given that he goes at it. Yeah, some crazy Trump supporters sent him some hate mail because he's bagging on Trump all the time. But apparently he wasn't satisfied with the sort of reaction he got about that. So on January 29th...
So hang on, just quickly, because there was a whole anti-lynching bill that was also trying to be passed at the same time. Was that weekend? Or was it around the same time?
It's around the same time. I couldn't... I mean, it actually got passed after his attack.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
So a lot of people are running around with a conspiracy theory saying that's why he did it. Mm-hmm. He did it to pass this bill, which you would...
Because he was actually there at the where people were demonstrating in favour of this bill. There was a photo of him with Kamala Harris and...
Oh, that was for a different thing. That was for Time's Up, though, wasn't it?
Oh, okay.
I think the T-shirt said Time's Up on it, which was Kavanaugh.
Oh, that's a Kavanaugh hearing.
Yeah.
Okay.
It could be. I mean, I've seen the photo. I know the photo you're talking about, but maybe the events are different ones.
It's good to see we've done our research on this one.
So, I mean, on January 29th, the tabloid news site TMZ broke the story that Smollett, a gay black entertainer and progressive activist, had been viciously attacked in Chicago. 2 racist white men had fractured his ribs, poured bleach on him, and tied a noose around his neck, and shouted, "This is MAGA country." That's what was reported. And also that he picked his sandwich up and ate it back at home after he'd been to Subway, that's it.
Not a sponsor of this podcast.
Not a sponsor. Isn't the owner of Subway a pedo?
No, it wasn't the owner. It was the guy they used on the ads. Yeah, Jared something.
Yeah,
he lost a lot of weight, and then it turns out he had a stash of child porn on his computer. The site, it was a couple of terabytes worth, I think.
To think I've had Subways. Anyway, there were reports.
There's something about a 6-inch joke that we should bring in here.
I think Well, we're getting off track.
Yeah.
There were reports that Smollett suffered a fractured rib.
The question I want to ask to Jussie is: did he get a 6-incher or a foot long? What do you think his preference is?
Oh, foot long. Easy.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, he's a
foot long guy. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. He's a receiver. He's not a giver.
I was talking about sandwiches. What are you talking about?
Well, that's what I was thinking.
So he likes to receive sandwiches.
Yeah.
He doesn't like giving them.
He doesn't like giving them out. He likes to receive them.
Right. Glad we got that one.
There were reports that he'd suffered a fractured rib, and later we find out he had a bruised rib, and who knows if that's even true. He had some scratches on his face, and if you've seen the alleged attackers, which I think everybody has by now, I think it's fair to say they could have inflicted more damage if they'd wanted to. Anyway, that's January 29th, but just 4 days later, February 2nd, he performs in concert in LA where he announces that he's the gay Tupac now because he's Tupac? Yeah. I thought it was Tupac.
Unless there's someone else called Tupac that I've never heard of.
No?
I think it's Tupac.
I'm going with Tupac. I'm going with Tupac.
Okay.
But this is an important bit because it happens on 29th. He's out there performing again 4 days later. Now he hands his phone records over, his heavily redacted phone records.
So the police ask for his phone because he claims that
for the phone.
He was on the phone to his manager as this attack went down.
Yeah.
And which Jussie said that he didn't want to hand his phone over because of privacy concerns relating to, other celebrities' contact details. And...
What a dumb thing to say. I mean, everybody's got private stuff on their phone.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about a crime here, and it's supposed to allegedly help you find out who the perpetrator is. But the important part of this, I think...
wouldn't hand my phone over to the cops, just to be honest.
Would you? I mean, I probably would if I thought that there was something on there that could actually help. I think I probably would.
Yeah. I think the cops at this point had already seen through this story.
But see, this is what I'm not sure because it happened on January 29th, right? He doesn't hand... when he hands his phone records over? 12th of February. 2 weeks, a full 2 weeks later. The very next day, they arrest the Osundairo brothers coming back from Nigeria at O'Hare Airport on the 13th. So this is why I think what I've seen now, like I was with you, I thought they're playing both angles of this. There's probably a couple of detectives investigating it's an actual hate crime, and then there's probably someone else working the angle that it's a hoax.
Yeah.
But from what you get...
Well, think about this. You're a cop, right? This guy comes in and says, I was attacked at 2:00 in the morning by two guys wearing red hats who recognised me as the gay black actor from Empire. It's minus 10 degrees. It's minus 10 degrees, Celsius, snowing and icy. And I just happened to hop out and get a Subway at 2 a.m. I think at this point the cops were thinking this is 50% is bullshit.
I agree with you. It's just that the thing is that the superintendent was so... I mean, you've seen the press conference with the superintendent of the Chicago police. I mean, he was really livid and like wasting police resources and all this. So, I mean, I don't know, but maybe for 2 weeks they were genuinely investigating this as a hate crime, not getting anywhere.
I don't think so. I reckon from day one that because people.
Well, I would hope so. Because
people were skeptical about it from day one.
Yeah, I would hope so.
Because
I would hope that the cops are thinking it's fake because it's like, Jesus, if you guys couldn't see at least some things wrong with the story straight away, then something's up here.
So it turns out the cops actually subpoenaed the phone records from the phone company.
Yeah.
And when they compared it to Jussie's Excel spreadsheet, which was heavily redacted of his phone call log, the ones that were removed were a phone number of these two Nigerian brothers.
Yeah. And
that's how they kind of knew that, these guys were somehow involved. And so the cops then ran this phone number against Uber or Lyft's records, and found that these two guys had left the scene of the crime at around the same time.
Well, there's actually video footage of inside the
Uber. Is there?
Yeah.
So I mean, I think if you're gonna do a crime, don't use Uber as your getaway vehicle.
Well, how about not using your own phone? I mean, if you're going to set up a hoax, why haven't you idiots got burner phones? Say, if you want to contact me, you only use this phone. We're going to throw them away. We're going to burn all your clothes. Just think about it. But I mean, this does go to how stupid he is.
Not him and these two guys as well. So the cops ends up searching the Nigerian brother's house, find the magazines that the letters were cut out of that was from the letter that was sent to Jussie originally. I mean, plus they found a bottle of bleach and some rope. It's
amateur hour.
Yeah.
I mean, you could see a dark comedy made out of this, right? Just how to botch.
It's going to be a telly movie.
A hoax.
It's going to be a telly movie.
It's a comedy. It's a comedy. How stupid they are. But can we clear something up about the Nigerian brothers? Born in America, raised in America. They're Americans. I don't know why. I know Americans have this penchant for saying, like, let's say you live in Boston, you're fourth generation Irish, and they call themselves Irish. I'm Irish. I used to work with this Irish guy, and he used to really hate that. He said, like, you're not fucking Irish. And if you went to Ireland and claimed, people tell you to piss off. Yeah. But I don't know if this is okay. Their ancestors or their parents are from Nigeria, so they're Nigerian. Maybe that's just an American way of describing them, but they were born in America, they were raised in America. They're Americans. Yeah.
I mean, it'd be like calling Jussie an African, just saying he's an African actor, Jussie Smollett.
Yeah.
Well, and speaking of Nigeria, so another part of the story was on the 29th,
the same
day that they attacked Jussie, they fly back to Nigeria.
Yeah, not suspicious at all.
Yeah, no, nothing suspicious about that at all. Yeah. Just a planned vacation.
And so the cops given them a nice greeting at the airport, February 13th. This is the day after that Smollett actually hands over his redacted spreadsheet. So they arrive, they meet him at O'Hare Airport, they take him into custody, they arrest them. By Friday morning, they've gone from people of interest to actually suspects. But then by Friday night, they're released, no charges, and we have we've got new evidence in the case, and we're going off in a new direction, and everyone's like, oh, Jesus Christ, here we go. But, I mean, let's just think about how dumb. I mean, okay, you've already said freezing cold, just happened to recognise this gay actor from some series, which is apparently not that popular anyway, not many people actually watch it.
It is on Fox, though. That's probably one thing going for it in terms of racist people watching this show. And
they're using their own phones, but he pays them $3,500 via check. He wrote them a fucking check. Charles Barkley had the best. Did you see Charles Barkley take the piss? It was brilliant. It was just beautiful.
What did he say?
Oh, he just said something like, "Look, if you're gonna commit crimes,
use cash.
Yeah,
use cash.
Yeah, I mean." Yeah, and then he did give them cash to go buy. I think he gave them $100 to go buy the ski masks and the hat, which they did
on the rope
together at the same store. They didn't go like, let's go buy the rope over there and drive 50 miles that way and buy something. No, let's not do it like that. Let's not think about it. Let's just go to one store, buy all the shit, and the store was called the Crafty Beaver. I mean, this is just a comedy of errors, isn't it?
I've actually got a good beaver story. I'll tell you off air.
Yeah, we've all got one of those. I mean, it's just it.
So and
it goes on and on.
Yeah, it goes on and on. I mean, it's just when you think you've heard the most stupid thing about this story, you hear another one, and they actually turns out they rehearsed this whole thing a few days earlier. Yeah. So, old mate Jussie has now hired a crisis management firm.
Yeah.
To handle his PR, and I think probably the latest in this saga, in this epic saga, is that Jussie, because he still, even after in the face of all this evidence, still claims that this happened. Yeah. And now the story's starting to turn a little bit, and he's starting to say, "Well, I have some unknown drug problem." Yeah,
I mean, I think it started with, the superintendent came out pretty hard at the press conference, and the police have come out pretty hard. There's a phony attack orchestrated. Taking advantage of the pain and anger of racism to promote his career. I mean, this is what the superintendent said.
So it seems like the motive for all this wasn't about any racism or...
No, he wanted more money.
He wanted more money. He thought that this would actually advance his career.
Yeah, and as people have pointed out, I mean, that's not an unrealistic thing to think in the age of victimhood. I mean, it actually is quite. Yeah, I mean, you'd be famous. You'd be on Oprah talking about it.
Oh, you'd be given bigger movie roles. And...
Yeah. All right. Yeah, he'd be playing. You know, he'd be playing Malcolm X in the next biopic or whatever. You know, that's what he'll be. I
wonder if he'll be able to play himself in the movie about this whole thing after he's done 15 years in jail.
Well, I think about the entitlement. I mean, apparently, I couldn't find out what he actually got paid, but some people were saying that it was close to. He was making probably close to $1 million.
Oh, without a shadow.
Close to, you know. Yeah. So let's say it was $800,000. Yeah. Jesus Christ! I mean,
still pretty good.
It's not bad, but yeah. So Smollett's lawyers, you could see them sort of anteing up this sort of victimhood angle, because they come out and said that he'd been betrayed by a system that wants to skip due process. You know, because I mean, they came out at the press conference and basically said, you know, he's a fake. And you know, this is a quote from his legal team: "The presumption of innocence, a bedrock in the search for justice, was trampled upon at the expense of Mr. Smollett, and notably on the eve of a mayoral election." You know, trying to link it to something else. Mr. Smollett is a young man of impeccable character and integrity who fiercely and solemnly maintains his innocence, betrayed by a system that apparently wants to skip due process and proceed directly to sentencing.
Impeccable. Well, I mean, except for that one incident in 2007 where he got done for driving under the influence, and he
used his brother's name.
Yeah, used his brother's name to police.
Yeah. Impeccable character.
Yeah, impeccable.
I mean, it's just you know, as you said, they hired it. It's PR spin and lawyer talk. And so if they can paint him as a victim, they are. And as you said, the latest sort of installment is that, oh, look out, he's got a drug problem, even though there's no evidence that he had anything more than sort of a recreational use of, you know, whatever he was using. Yeah. So, yeah.
But now he's also looking, besides the, you know, he's been arrested for falsifying a police report. He's also looking at a possible 10-year sentence for federal mail fraud.
Yeah. That might be. I mean, I'm not familiar, but maybe that's the worst of the two offences, because it's I don't know, it's a federal offence. Look, let's hope, you know, he gets busted for both and goes down for both and gets at least gets some time behind bars. I mean, the worst thing could happen is if there's a big sob story and he ends up going over to one of these $1 million rehab joints where he sits by the pool and talks about how oppressed he is, and you know, oh, he's, you know, then he's back on set. You know, in a couple of...
Well, he was back on set a couple of days after he was arrested.
Yeah, but then he was cut.
Well, I think they suspended him or something like that. But I mean, if you compare that to, say, Roseanne Barr, who lost her entire TV show because of one misplaced tweet.
Her politics are the wrong way around. Yeah. That's why.
But I think, you know, funnily enough, you know, out of all of the media and celebrities who rushed to cast judgment about this as being a racist and sexist and homophobic attack because of Trump, you know, Trump's America.
Yeah. Well, let's go through the litany of politicians. Let me just name them. Nancy Pelosi, Crazy Eyes Cortez, that lunatic Maxine Waters, creepy Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders. A congressman by the name of Adam Schiff tweeted about Smollett that I've seen the passion and moral clarity of his activism firsthand. How are these people going to live this stuff down?
Yeah. Kamala Harris had a good one. This was an attempted modern-day lynching. No one should have to fear for their life because of their sexuality or colour of their skin.
Cory Booker basically said the same thing, right? He said modern-day lynching. And they really are the shining stars, because what we have, like... So, Kamala Harris's tweet is dated the 30th of January. So she's one day after, right? She's straight onto it. And then just a few days ago, so literally 3 weeks go by, and then she's interviewed about the revelation. She's asked about what, you know, this is what you said in the beginning, and what do you think about it? And she goes, well, you know, we should have to wait till all the facts come out.
Well, hang on. She paused for about 5 seconds, and you could see her looking around at her cronies, and pretending like she didn't. Actually, she pretended like she didn't know the tweet. We'll actually play the audio of it.
Which tweet? What tweet?
About saying that it is a modern day lynching, that
sorry.
Yes, Jussie Smollett.
Okay, so I will say this about that case. I think that the facts are still unfolding, and I'm very concerned.
What a hypocrite.
Well, hang on, read one more. Alyssa Milano, She said, if that man staged his own attack, he is wrong in so many ways. No one could be that hurtful to stage this, right? To fuck with all of us by playing into our weaknesses and make it even harder for victims to come forward. No one could choose to be that hurtful, right? Right?
Yeah, she desperately doesn't want it to be true, obviously. She can't believe
anyone could possibly be so hateful as to fake something like this.
Cory Booker did the same thing. So he tweets out one day after, and then 3 weeks later they ask him about it.
We should probably wait for all the details.
Information, he said.
And then he said, but there is a rise in hate crime that needs to be dealt with.
Senator, you called the alleged attack on Jussie Smollett a modern-day lynching when it happened. Now police sources are telling many networks that Mr. Smollett is under potential investigation for, concocting a story and paying these men. Is it time to revisit what you said about these remarks? What is your feeling on potential hoax hate crimes in general?
Well, the information's still coming out, and I'm going to withhold until all the information actually comes out from on-the-record sources. We know in America that bigoted and biased attacks are on the rise in a serious way. And we actually even know in this country that since 9/11, the majority of the terrorist attacks on our soil have been right-wing terrorist attacks, the majority of them white supremacist attacks.
Why would you immediately jump on this? Because this is part of the problem. Why would you immediately jump on it with no facts, just a few allegations, but then 3 weeks later you want to wait for more information? Well, because the script has been flipped and now the victim is the perpetrator, there are no virtue tokens to be gained for your disingenuous posturing. There's nothing to be gained from it. So let's wait for more information.
Yeah. Well, actually, in that weekend there actually was a real hate crime in the US that didn't get much reporting at all. And that was in Brooklyn, and a synagogue, which is a Jewish church, was smashed on the weekend while the rabbi and his family, including young children, were inside. And if we're actually talking about hate crime statistics, and a lot of these politicians, while walking back their tweets about Jussie, have actually in the same breath have said, but hate crime's going up, and we need to, things need to be done about that. Well, we actually went through and had a look at the hate crime statistics in the US.
Yeah, well, I think the Jewish hate crime was up 37%.
Well, that's the biggest rise in all hate crimes is against Jews, and 50% of those occur in New York, which is the most liberal, democratic place pretty much in the whole of the US. But I mean, I think we also have to ask the question, are hate crimes actually going up, or is it just the rate of reporting of them that's increasing?
It's a bit of both. So it's really hard. It's really difficult. Well, here's the great thing about it. The FBI's got stats on hate crime stats going back to 1996. 1996. So they've got a wealth of data. But here's your problem. Basically, there's in 1996, for example, there were about 17,000 law enforcement agencies. Only about 11,500 actually participated in submitting data. Now that's about about 2/3 of all of them. But they actually, because a lot of the ones that participated are large cities, it did actually cover most of the population. So 82% of the population of where those law enforcement agencies police, they submitted hate crime statistics. But so here's your problem, right? So I've done the hard yards. I went through 22 years of reports, right? And what you find is so 1 year there might be 11,000 agencies reporting. The next year there's 12. Then it goes back down to 11.5. Then it jumps up to 13. Then it goes back again. And there's 1 year there where Texas forgot to submit it on time, so it's just a really low number.
Do you think that's because there were just a lot of lynchings that year? And
obviously, and thank God that they've passed that legislation now to stop all that lynching.
Yeah.
But
well, I mean, and within this FBI reporting, it also reports about violent crime, and which has been dropping dramatically since the early 90s.
Oh yeah.
And violent crimes in particular have dropped by more than half since the 90s in the US.
Yeah, overall.
That's not to say that it's still a good result. Obviously, we don't want any violent crime anywhere, but the rates are actually dropping.
Yeah, it's good news.
But it doesn't really. So the public perception of crime, though, doesn't align with the data, because apparently 6 out of 10 Americans believe there was more crime in the US compared with the previous year.
Yeah. I mean, so let's get back to the hate crime numbers, because there's been a bunch of articles come out and say hate crime was up 17% in 2017, which is the latest year they have data for. But here's the problem. In that year, there were an extra over about 1,100 agencies reporting. an additional 1,100. So there's about a 6% increase in the number of agencies reporting. But then, of course, the other thing is because there was so many reporting, they actually covered 94% of the population in 2017.
Right.
But the prior year it was in the 80s, like they covered about 87%. So you can't even compare the year before. So here's what I did, because this is the kind of nerdy shit I like to do. I went to the Census Bureau and I got the actual population for the year, and I found out, okay, so these enforcement agencies covered 87% of the population. So I grossed that number up. I grossed the number of hate incidents up by a factor to get it to 100% for all the years. Mm-hmm. So then I got all the years to 100%. So now I've got, these are all comparable now, right? Mm-hmm. And so what I found is that actually hate crime went up 11% in 2017. But it's down 28% from 1996. Hate crimes are down 28% from 1996.
What happened in 96?
Well, actually, 96 wasn't the highest year. 2001 was the highest year.
The year of the 9/11.
But so everyone would say, yeah, it's because of Muslim hate crime. Now, Muslim hate crime went from 28 incidences to about 450. Mm-hmm. So it was a huge increase in anti-Muslim hate crimes. But that only accounts for a quarter of the increase in 2001. Mm-hmm. So I don't know actually what drove that. I didn't read the whole report. I just pulled out the statistics. But anyway, that was the peak year, 2001. So actual hate crimes are down by more than a third in 2017 compared to the peak in 2001. And this increase of 11%, it's a reasonably large increase. But if you go back through the numbers, in 2015, it was a 13% increase. That was under Obama. So it's if you're going to chalk this up to Trump, this one anomaly, like in 2016, when Trump was coming through and becoming popular, I mean, hate crime was up 3%. So it's to run around saying this is Trump's hateful America just doesn't.
Well, let's talk about it in the sense of per capita, though. I mean, we're talking about between 1,000 and 2,000 hate crimes per year in a country that has a population of 350 million.
Oh, no. The hate incidents are running at about 7,000 a year.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, the number I'm looking at is hate crimes reported in 10 major cities.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Incidents, but I mean incidents.
Well, what is a hate crime though?
Well,
what's the sort of minimum threshold for a hate crime?
Well, that's the thing. It's self-reported, so you can obviously make one up, and you can get it wrong. You can actually be the victim of something, and you think it's because you're gay, when actually it isn't. Someone just abused you for some other reason, right? You're a dick. Maybe you cut them off in traffic and you thought, it's because I'm wearing these pigtails or something,
Again, this sounds like something that might have happened to you.
Well, don't check in my bag. So it's very subjective, but I mean, like I said, the good thing is they've been keeping data for a long time, and once you average it out and you have a look at it again, like you said with violent crime, it's down a lot from what it was 20 years ago. And yes, we've had an increase in the latest year, but you can't chalk that up to anything in particular.
Well, I think, it seems like these Democrat candidates like Kamala Harris and Cory Booker, they are really running on a platform of hate crime is up and we need to do something about it. That's their platform to beat Trump. And, this story, this Jussie Smollett story, it was perfect for them, for their narrative. That America is a racist country, a racist divided country.
It's also unfortunate for them though, because I also pulled out the offender numbers on those same reports, because they give you incidents, victims, offences, offenders. Mm-hmm. Okay, now African Americans are consistently about 20% of all the offenders of hate crime, and they're 13% of the population.
Yeah. So they're overrepresented.
Overrepresented.
Yeah.
So it's,
Who are they doing hate crimes against?
Probably largely Hispanics by the looks of it.
Oh, okay.
Gang problems. Because, some of these hate crimes, we should say, some of these hate crimes include not necessarily just abusing someone. It could be what you said before about a synagogue being firebombed or whatever. Mm-hmm. It could be a murder. A murder based on race or ethnicity or something. It could be burglary related, something like that. So I think there's some question marks about how you determine that a burglary was done because someone left scrawled on the wall, whatever, a racial slur or something, and then burgled the place.
Most violent crime is hate crime. I mean, you're not beating up someone because, you like them. You're beating them up because you don't like them. That's what happens.
That's why I think
I hate that guy. I'm going to punch him in the head.
Well, that's why I think the whole category of hate crime is just bullshit. I mean, you assaulted someone. Why is it worse? Why is it worse that you assaulted him? Like, I understand assault. Like, there's extenuating circumstances like self-defense. Some guy hit you in a bar with a glass over your head and you beat. There's things like that. But you assaulted a guy because you don't like the look of him, you hated him, you don't like the sound of his voice, or you hit him because he's gay. I mean, why do we make these distinctions? I don't think we need to. It's assault. Put him away for assault.
Yeah, there's already plenty of laws to deal with it. Legitimate hate crime, legitimate crimes against gay and trans people. People are just generally not going to believe it anymore. I think this is really, and it's not the first. It's not the first hoax of a hate crime. There's been a lot of hoaxes which don't usually get reported widely in the media.
Yeah.
But the media is doubling down now on saying, well, even if this is a hoax, this is still a big problem and it's still going up.
Yeah. And then just days ago, we had another story. I mean, talking about not believing people. A transgender gay rights activist has been arrested on suspicion of burning down his own house to make it look like a hate crime. And this happened in 2017, so it's taken the cops. They've done their investigation, but it just came out
didn't he or she also kill the animals in this fire as well?
5 pets. 5 pets. He's incinerated 5 pets, 2 German shepherds and 3 cats. And of course, another dumbass, like planning his hoax. So he purchased $10 worth of gasoline on the morning of the fire. You think about I'm going to burn down my house and call it a hoax. Maybe I'll buy the gasoline with cash somewhere way out of town 2 months before I do it or something. Maybe, no, I'm going to buy it on the morning. And they found traces of gasoline on his clothes. So and apparently, so he gave, someone broke into his house and set it on fire. But according to his own movements on the day, the arsonist had a 5-minute window of opportunity. So he was literally away from his house for 5 minutes.
Came back and it was just
on fire. Pets are dead. This is the clowns.
So there's a website called fakehatecrimes.org, which has more than 350 documented fake hate crimes from the last year or two. If you go to that website, you'll actually find lists and links to news pieces that actually cover these. And of course, no one's actually put together any data or pieced together that actually this is an epidemic of people doing these fake hoaxes. And I'll read off a couple of them just so you kind of get an idea of some of the things that happen. So we've got from the New York Daily News has revealed that 18-year-old Muslim Baruch college student who claimed 3 white men attacked her on December 1 while screaming Donald Trump made up the entire story so her parents wouldn't punish her for missing her curfew because she was out drinking. Yeah. That's just one. And the 7-year-old black girl who was shot dead in Houston, which the media claimed was a hate crime, turned out it was 2 African-American men. That's a pretty shocking story.
Yeah, that's because someone... I mean, the story behind that was there was a white guy who drove away from the scene. And so they thought that he'd done it. This was reported. But of course, they did the same thing. They all jumped on it when they're looking for some white guy.
Yeah. For the second time in 2 years, a person reported a written racist slur found at a Kansas State University admitted it was a hoax. Another one, Ohio University LGBTQ student Senate member alleged she received death threats. She was later arrested because she sent herself those same threats.
Well, there was the girl who reported that she had her hijab ripped off in a subway station, and this was trumpeted at the time. This is Trump's America, because this was around the time of the so-called Muslim ban, right? On certain countries, and this is okay. Obviously, we're going to link these two things. Turns out,
was it hard to get it off her head, or did it just come off in one shot?
It was. Sorry, it wasn't a hijab, was it? It was just a
headscarf.
Headscarf, basically. Yeah. So, I mean, she's just admitted that she faked the whole thing.
Yeah. There's been plenty. There's one more. We've got a woman pled guilty to making up rape allegations against 2 college football players in order to gain sympathy of another student she wanted to date.
Oh, God. Yeah.
We've got a few actual noose-related hoaxes as well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so we've got a University of Delaware's social media community and the state's largest daily paper launched into action overnight as some students discovered 3 nooses near the hall where the Black Lives Matter group had protested conservative commentator Katie Pavlich the day before. It was later found out that these nooses were actually remnants of paper lanterns left over from a previous event. I mean, why are people doing this? What's going on?
Well, I think we actually touched on it earlier. The stakes for painting yourself as a victim are high.
Mm-hmm.
There's endless rewards to be won. Invited on. I mean, if you are someone who really craves some kind of attention, you're going to be invited all kinds of shows and have, teary-eyed confessions on the couch with Oprah or whatever. I mean, probably, you're going to be some kind of celebrity. You can probably tour the country with it for 5 years, get paid. You're going to be an inspiring mentor to young people. You remember Smollett saying things like, I just want every young gay kid out there to know, this kind of stuff. You're a celebrity. It's a way to get celebrity and attention. And I think they are in some sense a victim of their own success, because going back to the person who incinerated 5 pets, I mean, the modus operandi there seemed to be that he was pissed off that gay rights had sort of fallen off the agenda, that it wasn't getting as much publicity, and it's probably because you won, dude. I mean,
everything's even now. You're not being discriminated against anymore.
Exactly. You're so used to victimhood that equality now feels like discrimination.
I think so. Kamala Harris, who's been doing the rounds now because she's obviously going to be one of the presidential candidates for the Democrats. She was on a radio show the other day suggesting that black people, African Americans, should receive reparations. Yeah, because of the slave.
Well, that's getting some momentum, but I think the left of centre, let's call them left of centre, not far left. They've got to decide whether they're going to go along with the ride, just to get back into power, or they're going to actually say, "No, look, we can't embrace this stuff." I mean, there are those people already on the left that are saying that, but I think there's too few and far between. There's a guy last year, and I can't remember his name, but he wrote a book about this, and he basically said if Democrats continue to play this identity politics game, and he's a lifelong Democrat, he said that they will lose, because rather than saying this is a black problem and black women, you have to stand in the back of the women's march, and Jewish women aren't allowed, and only black women can speak. You've got to have a message that says this is a topic that affects all people, unemployment or whatever it is, or poverty, or and it affects everyone of every race, and then you can galvanize a force. But if you're going to go down this, I mean, and think about reparations. Like, okay, what do you get? Let's say they do a means test. If you're a rich black person, you don't get very much, but if you're a poor black person, let's say you get 10 grand. A poor black person with 10 grand is just going to be a poor black person with 10 grand more than they had before until they blow it in the next 6 months on all kinds of shit, and they'll be back to where they were before. It doesn't help you get a job or an education, does it? I mean,
it doesn't take you out of the victim mentality,
no.
which is the problem. Once you're in that victim mentality, it's just easy to stay there and wait for someone to offer you some form of apology or whatever it is, money.
Yeah.
I think it's a bad platform to run on.
Yeah, I can't see it. It's. I mean, like I said, there's some momentum behind it. But
well, we had a thing like
fracturing.
that. Yeah, we had a thing like that in Australia. I mean, the Sorry March. When was that? That was probably 10 or 15 years ago.
Yeah, I think
we had the Sorry March, and a couple 100,000 people walked across the bridge to apologise to the Indigenous Aboriginals about the way they were treated in the past.
Yeah.
But what effect did it actually have?
Well, hang on. But I mean, go back further than that. You had Paul Keating. His famous speech, I think it's about 93 or 94, something like that. And we brought the alcohol. We brought, it was our fault. We did all these things. He didn't say that we gave you money to do nothing either, which is one of the bigger problems. But we've had this continually through our history. We have Sorry Day every year. Why? I mean, if I did something to you, I apologise for it profusely, and you forgive me or you don't.
I'd want to celebrate
every
that
year,
every year.
you
Every
gotta
year on
invite
a certain day. Yeah.
I'm expecting a phone call. It's
I think
coming up to.
I think we should probably have a sorry day next year for the last week when we did this podcast and I forgot to plug the microphones in and we did a 3-hour recording.
Yes, I want a sorry day.
I'll apologise for that every day, every year. Yeah.
I mean, come on, and this virtue signaling about everywhere we go now, we have to let's recognise the former landowners. Why? I mean, if you so there's this movement to pull down monuments. Okay, why don't you do this? Every government office building, whatever, erect a monument to the local indigenous tribe who were there. We don't have to go in through this virtue signaling bullshit all the time. There's a monument out the front that says this used to be the land of the such and such tribe. Done. Job done. And it can sit there right next to a statue of Captain Cook or whoever the hell walked around
standing
there.
on an Aboriginal as he got off the ship to...
Yeah. But you see, it's just nonsense. I mean, don't you want to... Because you get the feeling from these people, they don't want to bring the country together. They like this divisive stuff.
They always run that platform. I mean, when was the last time you can remember that an American election where the Republican nomination wasn't called a racist? Yeah. I can remember every single one. You had Donald Trump, you had George Bush, George H.W. Bush. So all of them have been, any Republican candidate. John McCain, is it John McCain?
Yeah.
All of them, they say old white racists.
Yeah.
They said about, who was the guy they said had a binder full of women candidates? Who was that? Who was that? Well, he's still, not Ted Cruz, it's... I don't know. Anyway, it's just it's just every time that's what they run on. They run on racism.
But they've only been able to do that for sort of the last 50, 60 years, right? From that.
Well, because before that, the Democrats were the
the
Democrats were the racist party.
The Dixiecrats flick. I mean, you got to. This is what just learn a bit of history. If you go back to the vote for the Civil Rights Bill, right? Or I think maybe I've got that wrong. 64. Johnson, right? Mm-hmm. It gets voted in by more Republicans than Democrats because of the Dixiecrats in the South, who then, some of them flipped, not many, actually flipped over. But I mean, the civil rights, more Republicans actually voted for that bill than Democrats.
Well, you go back through history even further than that. I mean, the Civil War was the Democrats versus Republicans, but the Democrats were the slave owners. Yeah. And they held the southern states.
It's sort of,
Jim Crow was a Democrat.
It explained there's sort of just a long procession of white guilt that follows them everywhere. So they're overcompensating for it and projecting their own historic racism onto the other side.
Yeah.
And of course, surely I'm sure there are some racist Republicans, but
without a shadow of
a doubt. Absolutely. But I mean, they've sort of, because if you're a conservative, you sort of stay still, right? You don't, conservatives change, but they don't change as quickly. So if you're a conservative of the 1960s who did vote for the Civil Rights Act and you do think that you should judge people by the content of their character and not the colour of their skin, you're the new racist, right? You're the new race. That's how it is. I mean, Thomas Sowell said something like, if you'd have said that, all people should be treated equally in the 1930s, you would have been considered a radical.
That's offensive. That's what that is. That was offensive.
In the 60s, you would have been called a liberal.
Yep.
And today, you're called a racist.
Yeah. I wonder what's going to be called in the next 20 years.
I know. You all know. Well, I mean, how far can you go? Because you're already been called a Nazi, right? Nazis is just a common slur. So how far can you go? Who's worse than the Nazis? I mean, is there anyone? I don't know. Genghis Khan, is he worse than the Nazis? I don't know.
Anyone who believes in capitalism and free speech. Yeah.
Well, anyway, another just, this hateful Trump's America that we live in, I just dug out another set of sort of statistics just to show that how far things have come. I mean, in 1967, 3% of newlyweds were, a mixed race or mixed ethnicity couple. In 2015, it was 17%, almost 6 times as many. In 86% of non-blacks approve of marrying someone, like if they've got a cousin or a nephew, approve of them marrying a black person, right? It was only 37% thought that in 1990, right? So think about that. And I remember OJ didn't do that any favours in 1994, So...
Does he get reparations? Does OJ get reparations?
Well, this is the thing. I mean, that's the thing. How do
He might get extra.
how do you work out reparation? Yeah.
Well, what happens if you're, I mean, what percentage African American do you need to be? Because, I mean, most people are not 100% African American. They're, you're a mixture of African American, Caucasian, and possibly Native American.
We have that problem here in Australia where you got people running around claiming they're Aboriginal and they look like you and me, and you would not pick them as Aboriginal.
We're two white guys, just for anyone who hasn't seen that. But I've got a bit of a tan, but I mean, I'm not claiming any Aboriginal status.
But that's it. I mean, you're 1/16th Aboriginal, 1/32nd Aboriginal. And yet, so that 15/16ths of your race, which is not Aboriginal, forget about that. I'm an Aboriginal person. What?
Well, I mean, let's imagine someone like Obama, who's half black, half white.
Yeah.
Well, his parents, he has one white parent, one black parent. Is he having to pay the reparations
to himself?
Because his white side are probably slave owners.
Yeah.
And I think there's a statistic saying I think it was only 1% of white people in America were actually slave owners during that time.
It's a tiny minority.
It's a tiny minority.